Hello, everybody. My name is Brad Cruz. I am the Associate Vice President of Alumni Relations at Case Western Reserve University. Welcome to our fourth installment of Page Turners. We do this online book club in conjunction with lectures by authors that are going on that will happen on campus as part of Think Forum. I'd also like to introduce you to two of my colleagues, Katie O'Malley and Summer Scanter, who you will also see. We are sort of working back of the house. Glad to have all of you. And I'm going to ask everybody to mute themselves. There may be times that we will do some discussion and you can unmute yourself and talk. But just as a courtesy to our hosts, we ask everyone to mute themselves. One last thing for me. I think it's always great to see where everybody is physically. So if you can, drop where you are in the chat. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Karen Kaler. Karen, take it away.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's an exciting time here on campus. We've just added to our alumni base. We've just added new alumni this weekend. So we've just had commencement, and we are looking forward to this Thursday. That will be May 22nd, 2025. At the beautiful Maltz Performing Arts Center on the Case Western Reserve University campus, we will have Hua Hsu. His talk is on a state of becoming, what it means to tell Asian American stories. For our discussion today, we're focusing on his book, Stay True. But I just wanted to remind you that the talk on Thursday is free and open to the public because it's part of the F. Joseph Callahan Distinguished Lecture Series. So that through those sponsors, there's no charge, but you must register. So go online, if you haven't yet, and get your tickets. You have to go online and get tickets. And if you want to watch it online only, you still need to go online and get tickets press that you want to watch the live stream. And so that's how you get signed up to do the live stream. So be sure and do that. Now, as we talk about our book, today joining me are Kapi Ho and Roger Wei, both of whom have served on the CWRU Alumni Association Board. And I'm going to ask each one of them to introduce themselves to you.
All right.
Kapi.
Thank you, Karen. So I'm a triple alum of the university. Got my degrees in the Department of Micromolecular Science and Engineering. And I currently work at Lubrizol. I've been there for 37 years. I've done a lot of different jobs at Lubrizol, including expat assignments in the UK and in China. And I'm currently the site manager for our corporate headquarters in Wycliffe. Roger?
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Roger, and I graduated in 1996 from engineering school. My major was electrical engineering. I worked for the telecom industry for a few years before I started to take expatriate assignment, residing in Singapore, in China, in Hong Kong, in UK for several years. And I started my own business about 13 years ago, and in the areas of investment, immigration, and also the consulting business. On the side, I'm also an executive coach myself. Thanks.
Oh, terrific. Okay, so now for those of you who haven't read this book yet, which we all have, but I just want to give you a little bit of a description of the book. The jacket flap says it's a gripping memoir on friendship, grief, and the search for self, and the solace that can be found through art. I found a video interview that Hua Hsu did with the New York Public Library shortly after the book came out while he was on book tour. And I thought he read an excerpt from the beginning of the book, sort of as a description of the book. And I thought that would be, I'd read just a little bit of that so you can get a feel for it if you haven't read it yet. He begins talking about driving his friends around. There's a lot of focus on the college experience, and really the whole book is while he is at university, so it makes it very relevant to us on a university campus. He talks about how he likes to be the driver so that everybody has to listen to his music because he's very particular about his music, and the friends that are in the car, and he really finds identity through music and through friendship. And talking about the experience, he says, at that age, the college age, time moves slow. You're eager for something to happen, passing time in parking lots, hands deep in your pockets, trying to figure out where to go next. Life happens elsewhere. It was simply a matter of finding a map that led there. Or maybe at that age, time moves fast. You're so desperate for action that you forget to remember things as they happen. A day felt like forever, a year, a geological era. The leap from sophomore to junior year of college suggested unprecedented new heights of poise and maturity. He's very introspective and also, he writes beautifully. In this interview that I found, Ken Chen, who was in that conversation with him, said that novelists and memoirists are encouraged to write scenes, yet this book has very few scenes. It's mostly exposition. He said that the book is more about the feeling of remembering something rather than the specificity of remembering. The vibe is that it's supposed to feel like you're walking through the floor of a dorm, just poking your head in and taking in different experiences. He includes digressions into philosophy and what he was learning in and out of the classroom. And although he breaks that rule of show don't tell, he tells us a lot. But the book was very successful. It made several Best Book of the Year list and won the Pulitzer Prize. So I'm going to ask some questions to our amongst this room, but also to you at home or office, wherever you are. And we'll answer here first, so you have time to think of your own answers. If you have an answer to the question or would like to discuss it, just hit your hand icons or raise your hand, and we'll call on you after we discuss it here in the room. So as just a little context on the very first question. This question is from the publisher's reading guide that I'm going to ask. But Wei's parents came to the U.S. as international students from Taiwan. They met at the University of Illinois. He wrote that in the 1960s, students from throughout the Chinese-speaking world found one another in these small, relatively remote college towns, and that's what his parents did. So the question, discuss the narrator's relationship with his parents, who are at times far away. How would you describe the Hsu family dynamic? And perhaps, Kapi and Roger, you could share a bit about your own family backgrounds as well.
Yeah, I thought when I read about their family dynamic that the dad was definitely the head of the household, and they were both trying to do what they could to, be successful in life and also provide for their son. My parents left China in 1957, and then they spent some time in Hong Kong, and then came to the U.S. in 1959. So they were immigrants, and I guess we debated that, I'm first generation. But again, they also, like Hui's parents, stressed the importance of, being in a technical field. I felt that pressure as well to be, a radiologist like my dad, or go to med school. And then also, I think the whole traditional part of being Chinese, there was an alliance back with their home country. I think my parents felt very strongly about their alliance to, they come from China, and they were trying to make a new life in America. Some other things that I thought was interesting is my mom actually didn't learn English until I was, in second grade. So us kids probably took advantage of that, because we didn't want mom to know what we were talking about, we would speak English until she caught on. And then interesting for my dad, because he was a radiologist, like they did not understand idioms or slang. And so there's one time where he said, why is this guy calling me SOB? That means shortness of breath. And we're like, Dad, that actually means something else. So there were some funny things that I recollected when I was reading that. And then the other thing that was interesting towards the end, when the therapist was asking him, have your parents ever said, I love you? And that struck me, because I don't think my parents ever actually said that, but then they tried to do things to give us and provide for us, and that was their way of expressing their love.
Yeah. I heard this before about a Chinese father who they asked him, and he and his wife were like, no, they were never affectionate with their children. And then the father amended and said, after they go to sleep at night, I sneak in there and kiss them. So there was all that love outpouring, but it was not culturally.
Yeah, traditionally, probably not so much.
Yeah. Roger, how about you?
Okay. My grandparents came to the States in 1950s. So like your parents.
Yeah.
So my grandparents came to New York at the time. And also like they were born in China, but they moved to Hong Kong, stayed there for a few years before they came over to the States. My parents didn't came to the States not until after China opened its door. That was in the 1980s. So my parents came over in 1986. And the kids, like myself, my brother, my younger brother, we came together, came to the States 1991. When I read the book, I can relate myself or my parents into Hua's parents because they came over to the States about the similar time. And also when the Taiwanese semiconductor industry is booming and the parents started to move back to Taiwan. In the 1996, I graduated from CASE. 1998, I started to take my first expatriate assignment to live abroad and help American telecommunication industry, a company, to expand their global footprint. I remember at that time, I split my time back and forth and half and half. Not even until today, I still spend half my time in Asia or the other part of the world, and the other half of my time that's in the States. And I see Hua's family, it's low-key. That's how they play, intellectual. And also, his parents leave the space for Hua to remark his own identity, but influencing him, but not interfere too much about him. That remind me about my parents. And I think they're the reasons, because my parents, when they came over to the States, everything that's new to them as well. So a lot of times that requires us to explore the world ourselves, rather than my parents can advise or lead the way. What does American culture look like, and how you're going to adapt into this new culture or new environment with all the people around me. And my kids were born in the States, but they live here in the U.S. most of the time. So it's more like a Hua when he grew up, and the parents was offshore somewhere else. And that's how I feel. But technology-wise, it's a lot easier. Because I remember in the 1990s, when I need to call China, it was like $15 per minute through AT&T. But nowadays, you just flip your phone and they can see each other. So my kids, even I've been away for 2 years from my last trip. I came back 2 weeks ago, back to Cleveland, but I haven't been back for 2 years. My kids are like, they don't feel like I've been away for so long. So I think nowadays it's a lot easier than in the past. So that's my family background and how I relate this to Hua's family.
I mean, and Hua's father was faxing him, right?
Yes.
So they would fax back and forth, which is like a real point in time when that was the things that you did. And, I just wanted to say a couple of things he said about his parents. He said they wouldn't have recognized themselves as members of this model minority. In fact, they hadn't even planned on becoming Americans. They simply didn't know such identities were available to them. Their allegiances remained to the world they had left behind, as you were saying, Kapi, about, that you still feel they felt more Chinese. And he said that he himself was talking about the struggles his parents as well had with the language. And he said the next generation would acquire a skill on their behalf, one that could be used against them. Commanding the language seemed like our only way of surpassing them. So a home life took on a kind of casual litigiousness. So is anyone out there besides us does anyone have a comment on this question? Any raised hands? Okay, then we're going to move on to the next question. And as context for this question, a lot of this book is about Hua's friend named Ken, who was a very close friend of his at Berkeley. Hua describes Ken early on as always anticipating the future, and I thought that was sort of heavy foreshadowing. But then I read on the jacket flap, it was there right to the beginning that Ken was murdered before their junior year. So the foreboding, of course, was intentional there. That Ken's life and a short life really impacted his friends. And so the book explores class and generational differences in identifying with the Asian American label. Wei suspects Ken's sense of confidence comes from the fact that his Japanese American family is more assimilated than Wei's Taiwanese American one is. Did this impact the way you think about the cultural differences and Asian communities in America? And if so, how? So can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think when I read that, it was registering about there's a spectrum. It's a range. So you have the American side of you, the cultural, and then you have the Asian culture. And everybody's a little bit different on this spectrum. And I think for me, because when my parents came over to the U.S., I'm more on the traditional side of it. But interesting that my cousins who came over at a different time and they were in the Bay Area, we felt they were more Americanized than we were when we visited. And so they're probably on this side of the spectrum. And I think a lot of people say that when it depends on when your parents come over, that's where you are in that spectrum. And so I think that's interesting because when you always just say, well, Asian American, there's actually a pretty broad range of how American you are and how Asian you can be. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think that's something to keep in mind, that you don't necessarily just all get together because you're Asian American. It's where you are in that spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about for you?
Okay. When we come to this topic, I find this interesting because when we talk about Asian American, it's a big name. It's a big name. So I remember the first time I went to UK, I traveled on business. I passed Manchester and a certain area, and my colleague told me, I said, "Hey, Roger, there's a lot of Asian living here." I look around. I said, "Well, I don't see any similar face like mine that's live here." I said, "How do you say like the largest Asian population here?" Well, here actually in UK, Asian that refers to Indian and Pakistanis. Mm-hmm. And I said, "How?" Then in UK, who am I? How do you call me? He said, "You're Oriental." So
You're
Oriental. So that's the difference between the first time, I feel like the difference between Asian and Oriental.
Yeah.
So in the U.S. we call it as like Asian American, right? But Asian consists of East Asian American, Southeast Asian American, Indian American. So that's all different. I got my mental health first aid license here in the U.S. And the reason I got this is because I'm trying to contribute some of my time to help the people in the Asian town that's suffering in Cleveland. And I started to realize that actually most of them is actually from Myanmar, is from Thailand, from Malaysia, those areas, rather than, at the first I thought that's China, Korea, Japan. So the culture is so different. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about this model minority, and the people think, well, you get to work hard, you have good life, and you follow all the rules. But when I was a mental health first aider, I deal with a lot of drug addictions, the alcohol abuse. Those type of things doesn't happen in the areas. For example, like Solon, that's where I live. A lot of, I call this Oriental live there now, not Asian live there. So I think that's a complicated issue in the States when talk about different people from different country. So that's one thing. The second thing is, even for Chinese American, copy, I call it very traditional. I said it's the first generation. And you see, if you look at the immigration history into the U.S. for Chinese Americans, the first wave was from 1920s, 1930s. At that time, a lot of hard labor coming to the States. Mm-hmm. And most of their industry was in the restaurants, in the factories, in the trading business. When my parents came over, that's in 1980s, 1990s, it's more like highly educated students, scholars coming to the States. And because I'm in the immigration business, So I saw the third wave of immigration come to the States. That was around the year 2010 to up to now. And that would be more like the high net worth families, individuals. They came over, they have the money, they have the knowledge. Many of them, they send their kids into the American schools in China, in Thailand, in Malaysia. So their kids, when their kids come over, you feel like they just more Americanized than even like a lot of Chinese American living in the U.S. So I see like three different waves of this immigration generation. Of course, when we talk about this Asian American culture diversities, I saw it's not a simple answer or simple problem to conclude everything. So it's ongoing, generation by generation. When you depends on when you come over to the States, what the family background you are in, and it's create all those different answers or phenomena we can see.
Yeah.
So that's how I understand.
Yeah. And because in this book, because he's dealing so much with his friend Ken, he's really focused more on I think that's a very in-depth and good way to look at the overall thing. And he's, of course, is specifically about Ken. He writes that all the previous times I've met poised, content people like Ken, they were white. It was one of those obscure parts of an already obscure identity that Japanese American kids seem like they are alien to other Asians, untroubled, largely oblivious to feeling like outsiders. And he goes on to say that the children of recent immigrants feel discomfort at a molecular level. So,
yeah. In parallel, we had a Japanese in high school, and I think his mom was actually in one of the internment camps. But they were very, I would say, more Americanized because he hung out with the jocks, and I was the nerdy geek that was kind of like sitting out there. So I think it was very interesting that my mom kind of said, "Well, they're too Americanized." And I'm like, "Well, it's just different, right?"
Right.
Yeah. But that was kind of the perception that they were more assimilated than we were.
Yeah. So, any hands raised? Okay, we've got a quiet group out there. That's just fine because we can go on and on. Okay, so as a teenager, you're talking about this cool kid from your school, and I think that's what the author felt the same way. As a teenager, Wei is preoccupied with projecting an image of cool and crafting a voice and a place for himself in the world. He broods on the idea of authenticity and the promise to stay true. What does it mean for Wei to stay true, and why did he choose this as the title of his memoir? And what is authenticity to you?
So Roger and I were talking about this a little bit, but the title really resonated for me because I think it's knowing who you are and how you fit in the world. And for me, in the U.S., I was always seen as Chinese, right? The minority in Westlake and still trying to figure things out. And then when I was in China on assignment, they saw me as the American. I'm like, oh, so I don't fit here either. But it dawned on me that my true fit, which we're calling like the third culture, is actually that bridge or that in-between space. So we're straddling 1 foot in U.S. culture, 1 foot in Chinese culture. And that's, to me, was what being true to me. And I actually found that when I was doing that job in China, that Chinese colleagues were relying on me to understand, Western industry. My Western colleagues were saying, well, what is it like to, navigate in China? And I was that in between, bridging those cultures and helping people from that standpoint. So I think, to me, that authenticity, which took me a while to figure out confidently after 50 some years, was that knowing what your values are and then knowing how you can be true to that and still provide value to the world.
Yeah. And, when hearing you describe it that way, which I think is very, how helpful you are as a bridge to both, you can see how the immigrants and children of immigrants are so valuable to our nation. And, in so many ways, but this is a very unique skill set.
Right. And that's one of the things that I really am passionate about here at the university is helping students understand how their culture can impact them and how they can be successful as they embark on their careers.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Cappy. My understanding of stay true, especially for Hua, that was a promise to honor his friendship with Ken, and also to be honest to his own emotion. So he wants to stay true. Stay true sometimes is hard, especially when people start to grow up and people start to wear masks on the face and they're hard to taking off. And my past career experience, life experience, I know like sometimes you want to stay true, but many times, all different conditions that's limited how you can just stay true. The book itself, I think, the name of Stay True is, I think it's going to capture the true emotion from the author himself. So that's how I read, why he titled the book as Stay True. When we talk about the authenticity, I think it's a more like how to deliver your thoughts and also how to deliver your value without any fear of the judgment. So, and because I'm also an executive coach, and then many times the people, it's hard to accept who they are and just to be themselves. And that start to create all those issues, the mid-age crisis. So that's how I see, what the meaning of the Stay True and why he put this, the name of the book, because sometimes it's hard.
Yeah.
It's not that everybody can stay true.
Yeah. So when he writes, as I said in the book, about things he's learning in class and things he's thinking about, and he writes about the philosopher Charles Taylor, who deals with the question of individual identity and wondering whether we possess some innate essence or maybe we're always in the process of self-discovery, self-creation, and revision. He says that we're all searching for the same thing, that quality that made you yourself, the self-discovery. And he says that Taylor calls this authenticity, this search for self. And he said that authenticity is a concept that makes sense only in its absence. We recognize inauthenticity, phoniness, and when someone else is clearly being a poser. But yet the struggle to feel authentic, that is very real, even if we know better. So I wanted to say, he also says that he and Ken, they had this joke about baseball, and he said, I can't even remember, he couldn't even remember how it started, but he was saying that he and Ken would say, stay true to the game, like sort of as a joke. And then it just sort of became stay true. So it had like multiple meanings to him, that special little phrase. Let's see. Now, the growth and self-discovery in the book, as I said, is primarily through Way's college experiences, both in and out of the classroom. And I was particularly struck that he wrote, when he chose to go to Berkeley, he was searching for his people. And I love that because often when have talked to parents of CWRU students, I have heard them say, my son found his people at Case Western Reserve University. When he writes of his early college days, he said, I just had to find people to be different with and a critical mass of others to flesh out the possibilities of a collective pronoun. And then later he writes of buying music and books to communicate affiliation to a small tribe. So he finds himself through these relationships. So I'm wondering if each of you can speak to the transformational experience of college, and in particular at this university.
You want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, it's a good question. because I remember like at the time I came to the States to study a case. Most of my time was in the library, in the lab, because I was in the engineering school. So a lot of things to do. But the one thing transformed me that was I'm a kind of person very introvert. But I'm not an extrovert type of person. I remember like at the time there's a lot of activity at school, a lot of clubs, and you can participate, and I started to enjoy that. So I started to reach out people, and I used to be scared of meeting strangers, and I don't feel I'm comfortable when talking to strangers. I don't even know what to talk, how to say hi in the first place. I think that experience gives me. In 1990s, even 1990s in China, when I came over, there are not many foreigners or Westerners in China at all. Before I came over, I have never seen any Westerners face in my life. So when they came to here, it's a challenge to me, how to reach out and how to talk to people. The whites, the black, the Asians from all the other different countries. How you can reach out? The students, the club, they're so friendly. That's a part of the memory I still have. I told my kids, when I have the summer send off in Shanghai with all the potential students. That's how I deliver the message. I thought that you're going to find yourself a space, a case. You won't feel like you're outsider, you're strangers. That's how I feel. That's even the 1990s. I think even if we talk about today, that would be a lot more open than even 1990s. But that changes my personality. The first job I had after graduation is not engineer. I was actually in the marketing sales position at Ericsson. It's a large telecom company. And I think the experience, the skill set I acquired at college that helped me get this job. I started to enjoy talking to different people, enjoy travel, and in marketing sales functions. I remember I was looking after AT&T and also Ameritech, the two large accounts in the States. But at the time, like most of the Asians, they study engineering, so they're dealing with a computer. I'm the one of the few was actually being selected as the management trainee in the marketing sales. The 13 candidates around the whole nation, pick up from all the different schools. We become very close friends even after 30 years. So I think that's what the college transformed me, at that time.
So I was one of those engineer nerds that was on the computer, but so I have two, I think, major transformations at the university. It's probably going against what my parents have been teaching me all along. So first one was that they insisted that we needed to go to medical school. We needed to be doctors in order to get the respect of being in the U.S. And my sophomore year in college, after a very tough biochemistry exam, I said, this isn't it for me. I preferred my engineering courses, and I remember calling my parents and saying, will you still love me if I go into engineering? But I made that decision that was right for me. And so disappointed them over the years. But Dad kept on saying when I got my master's, well, are you going to go to med school? Got my PhD, and Dad goes, well, you're not a real doctor, type of thing. So that was one that I knew, again, staying true to myself and finding myself. The second one was parents said, you have to marry Chinese because interracial marriages are more challenging. Well, I met my husband here in graduate school, and again, being true that he was the right one for me, and celebrated 36 years of marriage. So I think they finally got around to accepting him, that he wasn't Chinese, but that was another one that I felt that I was going against what my parents had been teaching me all along.
Yeah.
But I felt that was the right thing for me. So I think those were some major transformations.
Yeah. And that going into engineering, that they were a little hesitant about that, because it seems most the Chinese students I used to meet were all in engineering, And in fact, Wei said that his parents had faith in technical fields because you couldn't discriminate against the right answer. And I mean, do you have an opinion on why? And lately they're more in business because that seems like a way to be successful. But the number of Asian students who are in engineering, do you have an opinion on that?
I usually say data doesn't lie, right? You have something that's a foundation. My parents were more, well, engineering's not as good as medical doctor, right?
Yeah.
That was the field they said you would really be respected in the U.S. for. Like, yeah.
I see like for the students today, international students, especially from China, I said like they're in the major in business, in arts, psychology, in law school. So that's more diverse than at the time when I came over.
Yeah.
The reason I choose engineering because I don't have, English is not my first language. So it's a lot easier to talk to computer rather than talk to people.
Right.
It's naturally, I think that's the reason I choose engineering at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the other thing I think about the immigrant families that I have known. I know we had some neighbors who were, doctors that were working years ago. They were doctors from China, but they were working in restaurants. So they really wanted their children to do something where they would be very successful. And particularly with the one child thing, if you've got 2 parents and 4 grandparents depending on you getting a good job, you better be in a good field. But I often thought of this, it's a famous John Adams quote that I printed out that said, John Adams said, "I must study politics and war, that my sons may have the liberty to study mathematics and philosophy. My sons ought to study mathematics and philosophy, geography, natural history, etc., in order to give their children a right to study painting, poetry, music, architecture, statuary, tapestry, and porcelain." So you have to get the job and get established
Yes.
before you're free to
Do the things you wanted to do.
Right. Yes. So you didn't tell your parents you wanted to study poetry.
No.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, another question from the publisher. Stay True is driven by the author's desire to remember his friend and reconcile a senseless loss. Can you discuss how Wei's attitude toward Ken's death changes over time and what his final reflections on the person he has become suggest about Wei's connection to grief, nostalgia, and living?
Yeah, I think when he went through the classic, change curve between like being, shocked with what was going on and then trying to understand it. Then he went down to a dip and then tried to, over time came back up. And I think that's the classic change curve. But at work, we also refer to change as a roller coaster. So that you maybe start off here, but then you do circle back. And I think that's what I felt when I was reading his book as to how he was processing all the different things. I also think there was a strong element of how could he have prevented it? Or what would have happened if he was with him. So I think there was a lot of that. And I think one of the aha moments for him was at the end when he went to a therapist and actually they said, well, why do you think it's your fault? And I think that dawned on him, I've been trying to deal with all this because he thought it was his fault.
Yeah.
And it then finally made him realize, okay, maybe it wasn't. And I think that was part of his maturity curve. And then using writing as a creative outlet to capture a lot of this and helped him with dealing with it, and then also then probably coming out of it as maturing. Yeah. So it was an interesting, kind of, because when I read the book, to me it was very fluid. It went back and forth with a lot of stuff, and I think that reflected that whole change roller coaster than it is just a simple curve.
Yeah. And he doesn't say it in the book, but I read an interview where he said the day after Ken died, he went and bought a journal, and he wrote to Ken.
Yeah.
Roger, did you want to add to anybody out there raising a hand? Okay. Let's see. It's another publisher question. How would you describe the support Wei received from his friends, peers, parents, and counselors? How effective were they in helping him make sense of a tragedy? Roger?
Okay. I think that's network support efforts. At the very beginning, his peers, his friends accompany him. Even they experience the same pain for the tragedy. The parents is reliable, but they're not around. But provide the reliable support. The counselor is a present, but it's not the central. But I think the whole system, the process is not perfect, but that's sincere. When we talk about how to get through this process, that's how I see it. How the whole network is supporting him get over.
Yeah, yeah, and one thing that he said about he said that this happened during the summer, and in the fall, the school reached out to all of his close friends with an email that offered grief counseling. And he said, as far as I know, none of us took the school up on its offer. I think what has changed, I think they're known to be more mental health issues, like in the past 25 years, the past several years, a lot of anxiety, but I think there's also more acceptance of that. So I think students do seek this more. So when there's a tragedy at school, we always make counseling available, but as he said, he didn't take advantage of it. But he did in grad school, they offered a semester of free therapy, and he found out all of his friends were doing it, like his classmates were doing it. He said, to me, it seemed like a thing people did on the East Coast. And I was assimilating again. Oh, maybe he watched a lot of Woody Allen. I don't know. He thought that was an East Coast thing to do.
I also thought there might have been an Asian cultural thing in there too about, you suck it up and just deal with it, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know if that was something else that crossed my mind when he was talking about not getting help.
Yeah. And, and there families that have lived through the Depression, or, mine was a Southern farm family, and you just lift yourself up and keep going. That's what you do. You wouldn't bother people with it, right? Yeah.
One of the project I'm working on is actually providing the life coaching services for a lot of Asian Americans in the States, and also to help the new immigrants come over to get over this culture appreciation period, get over their parents and the kids' relationship. I start to see like the people nowadays tends to express more, seek more support from others versus at the time when Hua was over there. Probably just like what the copy said, it's a product of the Asian culture. Just whatever happened to you, just take it. But I think start to change.
Yeah. So another publisher question: have you ever experienced a sudden, shocking loss yourself or through someone you know? To which events in this memoir were you most able to relate, and how would you choose to remember loved ones who have departed? And Roger, you had a...
Yeah, I lost 4 relatives since after pandemic. But they're, of course, it's at my parents' age, or older. But the closest one, I always remember nearly every day, that's my uncle. And he was the one actually brought us to Cleveland from New York, because at the time he's a PhD and he got to work in one of the big corporation here. And he told us, come to Cleveland because Cleveland is so nice and people are nice, it's a good place to study. So that's how we came over. Like in 1990s when I came over, I barely know nothing about how to survive in this new world. And he is more like a mentor, not only academic wise, but also like, emotion-wise, helped me to get through the difficult time. So I always feel like he is not only my uncle, but he's a mentor, my life mentor. He passed away 2 years ago because of the blood cancer. And that's the first relative close to me that passed away. So I experienced the similar confusion and also the emotional things, just like what Hua experienced, when Ken was killed. So I understand how I was related to, he wear the baseball cap and wear the t-shirts of Ken, and I see like every present, even the Christmas card my uncle gave to me, I just look through, I still feel like he is around me. I can remember his voice.
Yeah.
The good thing is, when the social media starts to come up, and a lot of memories could be kept in the social memory could be remembered. So every time I just, look at his Facebook or like WeChat group, the friend group, I see like what happens when he's still alive. But I still feel like he's still part of the family, still part of here. So time heals everything. So I think as of today, I'm a lot better than 2 years ago. But I think that just everybody need to get over, and then eventually, because I believe in, I was a Christian, so I think I believe we were going to meet somewhere in the future all together. So,
and I'm thinking that no one else is. We're still. Okay. Just in case you're out there and want to say something, I wanted to give you a chance. The other, we went to a last question from the publisher. I think we've got time for one more. And the publisher question is, the memoir is set mainly in suburban California during the 1980s and 1990s. How does this time period and location shape Wei's experience of growing up? How does it mirror or contrast with your understanding of those decades? And Kapi, I think you had
I could try to answer that, because I think I was at CWRU in the 80s and 90s. And so I think overall, I think that was a period of just, suburbia. So I think there were definitely more Asians in the country. I think what I felt was a contrast was he was in California, so there was definitely a higher percentage of Asians, and that was a little bit different versus me being here in the Midwest, where I think we weren't as densely populated. So I think those are some of the things that I think were different, and maybe easier for him to find his people than for me. But I also think that when I was here, you thought you assimilated, and then I remember doing a summer internship down in Columbus at Dow Chemical, and went to a state fair. And I remember these farmers elbowing each other when they saw me because they hadn't seen an Asian female before. I'm like, okay, yes, I am a minority still, right? So I think those little things reminding me that I'm in the Midwest was kind of about what was interesting. Whereas I think in California, there was definitely a higher percentage, so they could hang out together, and there was more common, right? You weren't the novelty walking down the street.
Yeah. And I think I may have told you before about when I've been to, in Beijing and Shanghai, nobody looks twice at me. In Hong Kong, of course, certainly not. But we were in Hefei, which is a big city, but there weren't many non-Chinese people there. And I was walking out of a department store with a student, and I remember it was just starting to rain, and I saw a man walking down the street holding hands with an orangutan. I was like, oh my goodness. And I went to get my camera, and the girl was like, cautioned me not to take a picture. And I looked around, and everybody was looking at me. I was stranger than a man walking down the street holding hands with a monkey. So feeling like the outsider. Yeah. And I'm a short, dark-haired woman. I didn't think I stood out, but apparently I did. So that feeling of being somewhere else.
It's very interesting when we brought this up, because we talk about the Asian Americans here. I also know a lot of Americans living in Asia. It's the same thing, similar thing. When they walk, and they live there for 20, 30 years. They know the culture. They are family members. That's all the local. But many times they also have the identity issue. Who am I? So that's very interesting.
Though I do think the search for self is universal. And that's why this book is so relevant, because it's not just the search for self with an Asian American identity. It's the who are we? And staying true. So I think, Brad, do you want to close us out here?
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And don't forget that the author himself will be on campus, and that is going to happen on May the 22nd. Karen gave you some information on how to get tickets. You can also go to www.alumnirelations.com, and we can link it there. And then also you can send an email just to us at alumnirelations@case.edu, and we can make sure you get your tickets if you would like to view it live stream or if you'd like to go in person. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Kapi. Thank you, Karen. And have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye for now.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.